Well, good evening, everybody. This is the Roaming Prepper. Uh, had a little technical difficulty a few minutes ago, so my apologies for the false start there. Tonight, I want to discuss a few things that I think concern all of us. In particular, there are a variety of preppers across the country, as well as individuals. I follow, people I deal with regarding fuel, the grid, electricity, and other such things. Uh, Having been a guy in the industry for pretty much about 25 years at this point, there are a few things that we really need to understand about what happened in Texas and the grid in general. So many of you are aware that the grid is basically in three. There's the East Coast, the West Coast, and then you have Texas, which has its own subgrid. Um, Now, we all saw Texas is not winterized the way, say, the Dakotas or northern states are. So, what we experienced here in Texas was rain that froze, then snow, ice, then it melted a bit, and then it froze again. The snow and ice covered up the solar panels. Now, Texas is known for oil and gas, but they're the second largest, I believe, second or third largest wind and solar provider in the nation. So the solar panels were covered up and frozen. The uh, the wind farms got locked up because those machines are not winterized. They're not meant for that. Some people compare them to Antarctica. Antarctica is very cold, but it's consistently very dry. It doesn't have rain, abrupt changes, thawing and freezing in the machinery. Either way, it's definitely not up to par. Then the natural gas, a lot of the pipelines, valves, and whatnot, they also got locked up. And these things all happen one after the other. Even one of the nuke plants apparently had some issues, which I'm not sure about. In any case, what you're looking at is multiple things happened at once, and it caused the grid base essentially to start coming down. The only option would have been uh, either to let it crash or to do rolling blackouts, which they did, trying to keep the grids in balance. But this is not the first time we've had major grid issues. In the last 20 years, one was the Metcalf sniper attack that happened back in 2013. That was human caused. It wasn't a nature issue or force majeure. It was a human cause where multiple people with high powered rifles started shooting out transformers in a very large substation. I believe it was in California, and I can double check that real quick. Um, in doing that, had they knocked out that system, uh, they probably would have knocked the grid out from Santa Clara all the way to through LA and parts of Bakersfield. It would have been pretty bad for California. Um, it wasn't just people randomly shooting that transformer bank, because according to some timelines, a couple of hours before the shooting started, somebody went to an AT&T substation and cut a bunch of fiber optic comms cables that would have sent alarms to the main stations that were monitoring. So that was another instance where our grid did not have enough fail safes. Then you have the Northeast blackout, which was, I believe, 2003, 2005, where a station had a failure, but the other stations were not aware of the failure or the repair ongoing. They did not balance out the grid. It requires a balance of voltage and amperage across. Think of a spider web. You start picking pieces out, it starts getting wobbly. And they knocked out the grid from New York City all the way, I believe, to like Cleveland or something. So, three instances where entire sections of our country went dark. One was equipment related that we know of, one was human caused, and one was natural. Uh, the grid is very sensitive. So, in your preparedness, you really need to consider things such as you will likely be without power. Now, during Hurricane Ike, we were without power for 14 days, and we had three small kids at home. Hurricane Harvey, we lost power for a day, but the other side of town was in 6 feet of water and dark for 3 weeks. You need to be prepared for those power contingencies. Now, speaking of the power, that's why the Texas grid had its issues. But speaking of power, let's talk about how that grid affected gas. And when I say gas, not natural gas, but gas in the gas station for your vehicles. Well, if you look at the energy EIA.gov, which is basically the energy agency for the United States, they have a map of where all the refineries are. The refineries are disproportionately in the Gulf of Mexico. That's partly makes sense because of all the oil and gas in the middle of the US. It's also a legacy from World War II, where the Gulf of Mexico was easier to protect from German U-boats than the East Coast was. And at the time during World War II, the US was a major oil exporter. Saudi had not fully developed its fields whatsoever at that time. They were still in their infancy. The US was pretty much an OPEC type power. All those refineries had to shut down. A lot of them took freeze damage and other storm damage. But when they all go down at once, unlike a hurricane, which is more regionalized, this pretty much was a swath. The refineries are still not up to speed. If you look at even Yahoo News, Bloomberg are all reporting that U.S. or refinery capacity, rig zone, even the Victoria Advocate, because of the shutdowns, those refineries are still not up to 100%. Needless to say, distributors, suppliers from your local Valero, your Kent's, whatever store, they're not going to get their supplies in a timely manner. Actually, Rig Zone even goes so far as to say that they're still okay. So here's Rig Zone. 1 in every 7 Texas gas stations is without fuel a week after the freeze. This is a slightly dated video, but that's still going on. And that's in Texas. We're right on top of our own refineries. So when you go to the middle of the US, you're going to see that. It's going to be decreased trucking because you're not going to have the fuels. There will be increased costs trying to get these fuels to market, and that's going to turn into excess cost in your day-to-day preparedness, in your family, just your day-to-day existence. So you need to be cognizant of that. If you can, buy food in bulk, save it, store it, can it, dehydrate it, whatever it is you're going to do. This is going to take some time. This happened also during Hurricane Harvey. It happened during Katrina. When hurricanes come through the Gulf of Mexico, they shut down a bunch of refineries on the coast. It sometimes takes a while. However, those refineries are reinforced against hurricanes. They get hit by hurricanes constantly. They were not designed to handle freezes this far south, especially a freeze that went sub-zero in some places for a week. That's North Dakota weather. That's Syracuse and Buffalo weather. That's not Texas. That's not Oklahoma. That's not Louisiana. And there's a price to pay. This is going to be ongoing for a while, guys. So we're going to be battling this. Pay attention to your fuel prices. I recommend fueling up sooner than later. Don't panic. Just adjust your behavior. And when I bring these things up, much like a lot of other YouTubers, we're telling you this so that you'll be educated, you'll be knowledgeable, so you see it coming and you can adjust in advance calmly and in as coherent a manner as we're capable of nowadays to try and adapt for that situation, as opposed to it hitting you out of the blue and now you're in line with 50 other people trying to get fuel. It's going to take a while. The actually the KOLD 13 News out in Tucson, as of a couple of days ago, was still saying that not only are their fuel prices increased by at least 30 to 40%, there's still a lot of Circle K's, Valero's, Exxon's that just are not getting fuel. We're going to be fighting this for a while. Now, there's one more thing that's going to affect fuel prices. OPEC Plus, which includes Saudi and Russia, have essentially decided they do not want to raise production. So we've got diminished production, as I mentioned on another video, because of the current administration's stance on drilling in federal lands. You've got a variety of production operations got shut down for a week, so they're all behind schedule because of the freeze. You have refineries that got shut down, and now we're still struggling to get back to capacity. Some are as bad as only at 50, 60%. But you have an OPEC conglomerate, if you will, or monopoly, that has decided they're not going to increase production. Now, they're not going to decrease it, which is good because that would shoot prices through the roof, but they're not going to increase it. So it's going to keep pressure on the market to keep the gas, oil, other fuel prices high. Just an educational point, natural gas does not create gasoline. Gasoline, butane, propane, methane, all that stuff comes from oil, as does most modern plastics. So you're going to see a bit of a ripple effect because aluminum foil, the derivative called coke, I believe it is a petroleum derivative. Plastic is a petroleum derivative. So you reduce oil and gas, you not only reduce fuel, you reduce a lot of other factors. So in the short term, to the possibly the midterm, you're going to see this being an issue. Now, one last factor is global economics. After the hit the market took in 2015, and then we dug our way out of that, and bam, we got hit with coronavirus. A lot of companies across the board are taking a cash rich approach. They're taking a very good look at their balance sheets, at their P&Ls, and they're deciding to have more cash, more revenue, more dividends. So they're not looking so much at growth as they are looking at profitability. And that is coming from what I'm seeing by way of reduced expenditures on new wells, reduced expenditures on adding fuel, but instead they're going to be very conservative. So you're going to see it toward the end of this year. You're probably going to see, at least from some of the energy sector finance gurus that I listen to, you're going to see a flattening of activity because the market's going to push back. They don't want to expand. There's not a bunch of money rolling around the energy sector like it used to be. The wind in particular is now probably going to have to take a hard look at its designs across the US and maybe upgrade or replace certain of the turbines. So again, that's going to be a cost. They're going to stretch it out. You're going to see reductions in capacity in wind. You're going to see a little bit in solar, mainly in the oil and gas sector. So fuel is going to go up across the board, and we're still dealing with a grid that in the last 15, 20 years has shown to be moderately reliable on good days. So adjust your preps accordingly, adjust your life accordingly. Be smart about what you buy, be smart about when you buy it in bulk if you can afford it. If not, micro prep, basically buy small bits extra whenever you go. Instead of 4 cans of green beans, get 6, spend the extra $1.50. I'm hoping toward the end of the year, everything will calm down, level off. We'll see the diminishment of Corona and people can move forward. Until that point, we need to pay attention to the fact that energy supply is going to be a bit hinky. Now, remember, for those of you who do not live in the South, especially in the Gulf Coast, we are now March. In 60 to 90 days, we will be entering hurricane season. If the winter weather is any indication of what we're going to look for in the summer, if we have an active hurricane season, you're going to see the refineries shut down again. You're going to see drilling slowed down in the Gulf as a precaution against the hurricanes. And we're going to see a lot more of that pricing pressure on the energy. So again, buy what you can. If you can team up with people you know and trust and buy in bulk and divvy it up after, take advantage. I have another video about using the 5 market forces for business, which is an MBA concept, and applying it to preparedness. And one of those is the pressure or influence of suppliers on your situation. So if you can leverage group purchasing to get a discount or to get bulk, I advise you to do so. Cautiously, of course. There are a lot of scam artists out there. That's it. I normally do my Sunday sit rep. I decided to do it on Saturday night just so I can sleep in on Sunday and enjoy my coffee. In any case, this is a roaming prepper. Godspeed to those of you who are on the road, flying, on a boat, wherever you are. And for the rest of you, be safe, pay attention, and try to help each other out when you can. Until next time, thanks for checking in.